can you first share your response to the Supreme Court decision?
It was a disastrous decision following on the footsteps of Citizens United. And Amy, in my view, what the justices, the right-wing justices are talking about is freedom of speech for billionaires and large corporations to own American democracy. At a time when we already have enormous income and wealth inequality in this country, what the justices are saying is that these very same people can now basically purchase the United States government, can spend unlimited sums of money on elections, and I think that is a disaster for the foundations of American democracy.
Could you pass a law that says contributions must be made transparent and sooner than they are now?
Yeah, you could pass that law. In fact, there's been a bill around. We didn't get Republican support for it. It's called the Disclose Act, but that doesn't go far enough. I mean, in the real world, this is what's going on. In the real world, you have families like the Koch brothers, and you saw the spectacle in Las Vegas last week of Sheldon Adelson. And these people are prepared. These people, Amy, have billions of dollars. The Koch brothers are worth $80 billion. For them to plop a few $billion into the political process, for Sheldon Adelson to call prospective Republican nominees for the presidency to come before him, to hear what they have to say, so maybe he can anoint them with his hundreds of millions of dollars, is just an outrage to the struggles that people have undertaken in this country for a democracy. And by the way, if you listen carefully, and you just mentioned this, what Judge Thomas was talking about, and this is where the Republicans want to go, make no mistakes about it. They say this is not enough. What we want, what Judge Thomas and the Republican Party wants eventually, is to lift all limitations. So the Koch brothers or Adelson can pour millions of dollars directly into every right-wing candidate in this country.
On Wednesday morning, Republican House Speaker John Boehner praised the Supreme Court decision as a victory for freedom of speech. This is what he said.
What I think this means is that freedom of speech is being upheld. You all have the freedom to write what you want to write. Donors ought to have the freedom to give what they want to give. Let's remember, all this goes back to this bizarre McCain-Feingold bill that was passed that has distorted the political process in ways that no one who voted for it ever believed in. Some of us understood what was going to happen, and when it's pushing all this money outside the party structure into all these other various forms. And I'm all for freedom. Congratulations.
House Speaker John Boehner. Senator Sanders, your response.
Well, my response is that Boehner is right in a sense. He's talking about freedom for a few hundred of the wealthiest people in this country. If you go up to the average person and say, guess what? We have given you more freedom. Previously, you could only spend $125,000 in direct contributions to candidates. Now you have the freedom to spend $4 or $5 million. People will look at you like you are crazy. This is freedom for a handful of the wealthiest people in this country to undermine American democracy and to buy elections. That is, to my mind, not what democracy is supposed to be about. And let me add this, Amy, because I think a lot of people, have concerns about the economy, healthcare, the environment. They say, well, this is really not all that important. They're wrong. Understand what these folks want. Most of the people who are contributing, the billionaires who are contributing into the political process. Take a look at what the Koch brothers' agenda is about. It is to end Social Security, privatize it, cut it, end Medicare as we know it, end Medicaid, cut federal aid to education, do away with the Environmental Protection Agency so these guys can pollute and pollute and pollute. This is a decision that will impact every American's life, giving more power to the very, very wealthy, and in my view, moving this country away from a democratic form of society into an oligarchic form of society.
How does this McCutcheon decision compare to Citizens United?
It's a bad decision, not as bad, in my view, as Citizens United. What Citizens United, what this decision says is, okay, you can now spend $5 million in direct contributions to candidates. That's really bad. What Citizens United says is, hey, you can go into your corporate treasury, you can spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. Just one last point on that. Both Obama and Mitt Romney spent a little over $1 billion in their campaigns. I suspect that in the next presidential campaign, the Koch brothers themselves will spend $1 billion to elect the candidate of their choice.
So, Senator Sanders, what are you planning to do about this?
Well, I think we've got to move forward in a couple of directions. I think the first point that we have to move, direction that we have to move in, is to overturn Citizens United. And that requires a constitutional amendment. There are now many, many hundreds of cities and towns throughout the country who have gone on record in supporting overturning Citizens United. I think there are something like 16 or 17 states that have done that. Here's the point, Amy, on this one, and it's an interesting point. I do not believe that this is simply a progressive versus conservative issue. I think you got a lot of ordinary conservatives out there who say, you know what, we didn't fight and die in war to preserve democracy so that a handful of billionaires can control the political process. I think we could put together a strong coalition. I think we've got to focus on that. Groups like Public Citizens are already doing a great job. Second thing we've got to do longer term, but equally important, we need to move to public funding of elections, doing exactly the opposite of what Boehner was talking about. Boehner talks about freedom for billionaires to be able to buy elections. Our job is to say to these billionaires, sorry, you're not going to buy elections. Everybody in this country, whether you have a lot of money or not, should have the opportunity to run for office.
What about your plans in 2016, Senator Sanders? Are you considering running for president of the United States?
Well, what I have said, Amy, is that I am considering running for president. It's a long way from Election Day and very long time before I have to make that decision. The reason that I said that is not because I wake up in the morning with the burning desire to be president. That really is not the case. But I happen to believe that there are such enormous issues out there that I just don't want to see swept under the rug. The middle class in this country is disappearing. We have more people living in poverty than ever before. The gap between the very, very rich, everybody else, is growing wider. The scientific community tells us that climate change is the great environmental crisis facing our planet, that we need bold and aggressive action to reverse greenhouse gas emissions. Real unemployment today is 12%. It's not 6.8%. We need to create millions of jobs. We need to deal with the issue you and I have been talking about, election reform, constitutional amendment. This is a critical moment in American history, and the same old is not really good enough. So I'm going to be going around the country talking to people and see what kind of support there is for a strong progressive agenda.